Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to our truly global audience joining us today. Welcome to Supercharge Your Outdated Systems with ChatGPT, the first webinar in a four-part series proudly sponsored by Softura, a leader in AI, application development, application modernization, machine learning, and data science. Before we begin, I wanted to let you know that attendees are muted with cameras off, and we will have the question and answer section open throughout the webinar. I'm your host, Jim Edwards, an advanced technology account executive, and joining me is our presenter, Frank Braski, our chief evangelist for AI, IoT, and RPA. Hey, Frank.
Hey, Jim.
So over the next 30 minutes, Frank will share insights on the inner workings of ChatGPT and how it can supercharge business applications. Frank will showcase examples of integrating generative AI into sales and service applications that are far beyond what most companies have envisioned. Frank will give overviews of Microsoft Copilot and cite a few examples of its use. Frank will then give you a glimpse into the future state of business applications using generative AI and ChatGPT for essential functions such as HR, finance, marketing, resourcing, and estimating, all while providing you with a practical framework to supercharge your transformation. For those of you midway through an application development or modernization, you'll be taking in a lot of information today, and we encourage you to pause and consider opportunities presented. It could redefine your plans and help you to create something far better than your current trajectory. If you do find that you want to explore this further, Softura is happy to assist. So to ensure that you get the most out of this session, a select group of questions posed to Frank will be answered and emailed to you with a recording from this webinar to share among your colleagues. Everyone who's signed up for this webinar will be offered a 45-minute private consultation with Frank, providing an opportunity to discuss how these technologies can be applied to your unique business needs. Look out for that email with information on how to take advantage of this opportunity. So let's delve into how you can supercharge your systems, reduce your technical debt, and embrace a future powered by generative AI. Let's begin. So Frank, the audience is yours. Share with us your insight on using generative AI and ChatGPT to supercharge outdated business systems. There you go, Frank.
Thanks, Jim.
You're welcome.
So since I am going to be sharing this presentation with everybody, I'm not going to bore you by trying to read all the details of these slides, and I will skip through several slides because we've only got 30 minutes, so we want to make sure we take care of everybody's time. But just suffice it to say, I've been in the industry now for over 32 years. I've worked at the majority of the tech titans, including the big three in the world of AI, IBM, Microsoft, and Amazon. Also done some work with Google, and most recently been doing a lot of work with OpenAI. So I've done some work in the past for the military, helping train systems for threat detection using computer vision, semantic analysis, threat analysis, et cetera, as well as adversarial networks, et cetera. So you can link up with me on LinkedIn and feel free to follow. But just wanted to get a sense, back when I was at IBM, I was at IBM for 10 years. I worked on a couple of different projects, some of which were classified, but the majority of them had to do with using lots of data and creating intelligent systems. And back then, we were mostly focused on narrow AIs, things like the system that built Kasparov in 1990, that beat Kasparov in 1997, the world grandmaster in chess. Or you may remember Watson, this little guy that's animated here, winning the championships and beating all 5 of the top Jeopardy contenders from the show's history. So Watson is just one of a series of, quote unquote, smart assistants. And you actually have another one that's running down below. If you'll see the screen that's being scripted, you see my words are being captured and translated in real time. That's actually an example of the Azure Cognitive Services that are now being utilized and are part of the OpenAI stack that's being offered by Microsoft. So the thing that's interesting about these different systems is, you may or may not have noticed, they don't seem to ever get much smarter. So, for example, if you're dealing with Siri or she who now should not be named Alexa or Cortana, they don't seem to have a lot of the information. They might know your context, They might know your calendar and be able to get into your email and whatnot, but they really don't know anything much about you, your role, what you do, what your company does, or the objectives or goals that you're trying to achieve. And that's one of the things that makes them kind of frustrating to use. But the beauty is they're, they're lacking this thing called context. And that's really what has been the thing that has propelled ChatGPT and the latest large language models into the forefront of everybody's, news and media. You can't go a day without getting, some news article about somebody's doing something new and interesting in that space. And so I want to go into a little bit about, ChatGPT and how we would utilize it. But first, give you a little bit of background about, it came from OpenAI. It's been in the works now for about 8 or 9 years. The actual general purpose transformer that has been out there for that's being used so prevalently has actually been around for a couple of years. And it wasn't until last November when OpenAI actually created a conversational chatbot to utilize its capabilities. That's when it really started to take off and people really got the power of generative AI. And so when we talk about generative AI, the reason we talk about it that way is because it's very good at generating text. Not only generating, and regurgitating existing text, but it can also summarize that text and synthesize new information based on text that it's absorbed. It can do that while it's doing language translation. You can actually have the translation that's happening down at the bottom go to your language of choice. So, it could be going into Spanish or Japanese or Korean. It allows you to do question and answering, but more than just the question and answer pairs that most people are familiar with if they've ever used a chatbot prior to about 6 months ago. This actually has the ability to really perceive and understand what it is that you're trying to ask about, and you can correct it. And that's really what makes it conversational. And it can pick up on the nuances and different styles of thinking about things, as well as interpret mixed media. And I'll show you what I mean by that. It actually has the ability to go and look for meaning. It can also provide context for your business data. And if you take me up on the offer to do a one-on-one consult, I'll actually show you how I did that to prepare for this presentation, as well as meetings that I've been having with clients and customers, actually using ChatGPT and the new Bing to help me prepare for those meetings. It also can figure and reason and pass logical tests. It's already passed the bar exam. It can pass do very well on the SAT, both in reading comprehension, math, as well as writing. It's a very, very well done, highly capable writer, in such that you can even change its style, its tone, the educational level that it's referring to things at, as well as utilize your own branding or the voice. And the voice, I don't necessarily mean like a custom voice, but the voice of your organization. How you talk to the community, how you talk to the world, and whether you're folksy or friendly or sophisticated and classy, or very approachable and informal. All of those things are things that you can tell it how to respond, and it will do so accordingly. And so, just to give you an example of what I mean by style, if you happen to be a fan of alliteration, you could tell it to write an article and then about a certain medicine, and then make it such that every word has to start with an A. And again, I won't go through all of the details of what it just did, but each one of these sentences actually makes sense. And it's every word in the sentence starts with A. It's pretty phenomenal. Another case of what I mean by interpreting, it actually can understand why this is funny. It goes and it looks at this and sees that this is a tray of chicken nuggets. It's not a picture of Earth from space. And the fact that it is kind of that absurd is that unexpected juxtaposition that makes it interesting and funny, and follows the classic definition of real humor, which is benign violation. So it's very subtle in what it can do, and the latest versions of the language models are very sophisticated. So you may have seen Satya Nadella before. He's the CEO of Microsoft, and he's been on a tear lately. They've invested over $10 billion in OpenAI to get early access to the underlying language model, and they've been investing in building the world's largest online supercomputer for handling these large language models in the Azure cloud. And he says, human language is the new user interface layer. And so just like we talk to our devices and interact with them, more and more, bots, the things that are underlying those systems, are like the new applications. And so we're going to see more and more of applications starting to take advantage of this sort of contextual knowledge and the ability to generate and synthesize information going forward. A great example of that is the new Bing. If you haven't tried it, I highly recommend it. It's a phenomenal implementation that takes ChatGPT and puts it on steroids. And what I mean by that is ChatGPT is somewhat locked in what its capabilities are, and I'll explain that in a little bit in the limitations. But you see here on screen, it actually will go and give you the ability to give you footnotes as to why it's saying what it's saying. And you can actually do this in your natural voice. Another example is, you can create answers on the fly. Say, give me a trip to London. I could also do things like give it a budget. Say, okay, give me a trip to London for under $10,000, and it would give you one set of itineraries. Or I could say, give me a trip to London in less than $2,500, and it would come up with a different set of things that I could or should be able to do. So it's really becoming more and more powerful. So if you've used ChatGPT, you've seen this screen. This is the basic launch screen, giving you some examples of things that you can try, as well as the capabilities. I mentioned before, understanding the context and remembering what you've said earlier in the conversation is critically important. It allows you to provide feedback, and you have the kind of the thumbs up, thumbs down option that allows you to tell it, yes, you got that right, or no, you didn't. Sometimes it gets things completely wrong. So we're still in that early stages where each and every one of us, every time we use the system and we push the feedback button to tell it yay or nay that was correct or wasn't, it's learning the whole time. So it's literally getting better every day. If you're using the public versions of ChatGPT, you may have been frustrated by how hard it is to get into it and to actually get it to answer. So, for those of you that can afford it, the $20 monthly fee to actually get the professional version is well worth it. You also get access to the new GPT-4 trainer, which has literally over 1 trillion more items that it's been trained on. And you get rid of some of the limitations that you have. And so, like I said, it can, it doesn't always get things right, and that's one thing to be very aware of. People that are turning this on, audits and compliance and feedback and measuring and double checking are very important, because it may not do what you think it should do. But the beauty is you can correct that and solve some of those problems as they come up. And also the core system has very little knowledge of events since September of 2021. That is not the case with the Bing implementation, as well as the OpenAI and the cognitive services that Azure provides on the system, because you have the ability to not only have all the world's knowledge that's already been trained, but you can also add your own industry's knowledge, your own company's knowledge, all of your internal training materials, etc. All of those things can go in to make the system better, faster, and more reliable and responsive. And so if you haven't seen the new Bing, the new Bing has done something that Google has been trying to fight off for years. I now do not use Google on a daily basis for everything I do. I actually use Bing for the vast majority of the work that I do, because I do a lot of research and preparation and looking for information. And Google's very good at regurgitating what is out there, but it really has no clue how to understand what it is that I'm looking for or what I'm working on. Bing does. And so the thing that's powering Bing behind the scenes is Azure's OpenAI, or the cognitive services. And Microsoft has had a series of cognitive services available for about the last 8 years. They've invested billions of dollars into getting this working, and it's worked pretty well. But it's only recently, really since February, have certain people, like, for example, I have access to the early version of the ChatGPT 4 implementation of Azure services, and you can do some really powerful things. Right now, most people have access to GPT-3 and 3.5. We're also talking about ChatGPT, but just so you know, Codex is one of the trainers that's been available that developers like myself and others have been using for the last several years as part of GitHub's Copilot program. Literally, some analysts say that today, approximately 40% of all code that's being written is actually being written by AIs. And then for those of you that have seen these things about, image generation and creating new crazy videos and whatnot, that's DALL-E is one of the examples, Stable Diffusion, and some of the others. These are how people are generating new kinds of imagery and music and all kinds of other things. But under the covers, we use, I'll take you through some of the things that you're going to see being used today. We use Azure Cognitive Search, which is basically a search on steroids that has the ability to interpret what you're looking for. So for example, you don't have to say, go find me this file from this date and this time. You can say, go find me all the contracts that ever had anything to do with this particular technology. And it will go and it will read through the documents and only give you those contracts that have that information. It has the ability to translate fairly sophisticatedly into multiple languages. In fact, they've started learning new languages they didn't actually train on. There's a capability that we use in the vision side of things for recognizing forms and invoices and POs and pictures, as well as the bot service. We've been using the bot service now for several years. We use it to integrate into things like Microsoft Teams and Slack, as well as people's websites and/or text services. I won't go into the detail about speech or video analyzing, but we also do a lot with the decision system and the automation, and now obviously OpenAI. So we've gone through kind of a background of that. It's a very broad brush, very quick. I know it's quick, but you can go back and rewatch this webinar as well as get the information from it. So now I want to talk about some of the use cases for generative AI. And these are some things that we've worked on with clients of ours. So this was an automotive dealer group that had 46 different dealerships for practically every brand you can imagine in North America. And they had 150 different digital properties. And that's what I mean by that is they had their dealerships, they had body shops, they had oil change places, car washes, et cetera, et cetera. And all of these things were different URLs, written in different styles, different voices, because they were kind of aggregated over time. People are very good at acquiring companies, but they're not necessarily great at merging them. And so they had all these disparate systems, and they also had a siloed sales and internet team. And so each one of these little organizations had its own staff that were unique to them. And so we worked on that. And this is an example of one of the bots. If you've ever gone car shopping lately, you've seen these all over the place. This happens to be one of the most popular ones. But even after having been out in the market now for 6 years, it's very expensive. They have some different underlying things there, but most of the time it's actually a real person. It isn't actually the person that you're seeing, and that's one of the things that people complain about is they're like, hey, I'm talking to Amber, but there is no Amber. It's a made up name, and they have a pool of these names that pop up. So that's a bit disingenuous. They don't remember you or your conversations from time to time, and here it's asked me, how can I help you? I said, hey, do you have any Teslas? And the first thing it wants me to do is to choose a dealership. And like, I don't want to choose a dealership. Do you have any Model 3s? And it doesn't really know. And so she reintroduces herself and asks how I can help you. I said, hey, I just told you. I think everybody can relate to these sorts of experiences where these bots that you're dealing with, even though they're supposed to be intelligent, they're really not. They're quite dumb. And so oftentimes people get frustrated because they don't understand what you're doing, even if you explicitly say what it is that you're trying to do. And they frustrate people. And in this case, they had a 69% abandonment rate, and which is not terrible, it's tongue in cheek. But on average, we've experienced, and there's a lot of analysts that say it's between 60 and 90% people are dissatisfied. So we found it's around 70% of the people that use these types of bots and services do not like them because they do not do what people expect them to be able to do. So here's an example of that bot re-implemented with the new interface. And so here you can see it's not trying to pretend to be something it's not. It remembers who I am. The fact that I was looking at this Corvette previously and that I'm interested in it, so I say, yeah. So because it's integrated with things like Kelly Blue Book and the inventory system, it knows what the price is, and the fact that this particular price is less than what's being offered in KDB, and it's low mileage, and it's going ahead and doing the next best action, which is saying, okay, I've come back. I obviously like this car. Maybe I want to see it, either drive it or have the salesperson drive it to me. And so it remembers me. It doesn't ask me to repeat things that it already knows. Like, for example, don't ask me what car I'm interested in if I'm on a car page. It integrates with their third-party systems like their CRM system, their sales and service and parts systems, and it gives them real-time product information. In this particular case, they had an issue with people would come in thinking that a vehicle was there, and it wasn't because it had already been sold. Which, if you've been car shopping these days, you realize that's a real thing. There's very low and limited stock availability. It remembers things that I might have asked it about, questions, etc., as well as the thing that the sales folks really like is the fact that it will summarize all of this so that they don't have to go and read a whole bunch of texts or previous history about this particular customer to understand where this customer is at in the buying journey with respect to that organization. And so now the bot seems to actually work. They increase their net promoter score and satisfaction, lowered the abandonment, improved the seller morale with 3 times more qualified leads because people actually didn't get frustrated. They actually went through the process. They boosted seller productivity with a fat bottom line, 9% boost in sales. And on the back end, we actually use Microsoft Teams to interface with this bot on the front end. So we were able to then virtualize their sales teams, internet teams, and service and finance departments. So instead of individuals being only working on that one location, now, if you're a salesperson and you're selling cars, you can sell cars anywhere. And so now all of those people can be productive throughout the organization without having to worry about, oh, well, Sally's the internet leads person over here and she's not in right now. So another example is United Forest Products. They're a global multinational supplier of lumber and paper products. They had a very cumbersome and clunky procurement system. Things required actually physically talking to people. Approvals would get stuck in people's mailboxes, and there was a lot of follow-up created by the system that people were asking, what is the status? So we used the Microsoft Power Platform to interface with their existing Active Directory, and we built them a custom bot that was conversational and allowed them to actually interact with this bot to do things like order parts and equipment or supplies from CDW, which was one of their major suppliers. Because we were integrated with their Active Directory, we were able to talk to their HR system to know who they were, what budget center they had, who they reported to, etc. We also were able to read and write tickets into ServiceNow for managing their help desk, as well as getting asset information to say, what does this person have? So if I'm saying, hey, I need a new mouse, it can look and see what kind of mouse I have. And if it sees that I'm in the IT department, it's not going to try to triage that for me. It knows I probably know that I need a new mouse. Don't frustrate me by asking me 50 million questions. And then because it knows who I am, what my budget is, and who my boss is, instead of having to go through emails, if it's approved and it's part of the curated product catalog, I can just order those things because it turns out, I don't need to, the company doesn't need to spend $67 to get me a $5 item. They've already got them inventory. They've got a deal worked out with CDW, and they've got a depot. So let's just make that happen. But for those cases where they didn't have those things on hand, we integrated with their enterprise portal and Shopify and SPS Commerce and Sitecore. These are e-commerce platforms and supplier networks. We also talked to their third-party logistics like UPS and FedEx, so that when things actually went shipping and were en route, updates would actually get sent out, and you wouldn't have to get all these things via emails or text. They could actually just come to you in your channel. And then last but not least, we integrated with Amazon Business for all the other miscellaneous products. So they can go to one place and actually do simple ordering as easy as it is, like with Amazon. They had a tremendous ROI in less than 5 months. The process was literally 100% better. And they went from average orders taking over 7 days to complete to under a minute. Because if it was something that was in budget and in stock and you were approved for it and it was a part of the standard issues, they just straight through processed it and made it happen. And so, those organizations, these particular platforms may not be the ones that you have, but it doesn't matter. We've worked with all of them, and we that's what we do for a living, is we do custom software development and application integration. So irrespective of what your help desk is or what your procurement and backend systems are, your identity and access management systems, we can work with them. This is just to give you an example of what it looks like. And I'll skip through some of these because we're getting close to time. But again, you have access to these in your system, so you can go and review them at your leisure. This was another system that we used to actually automatically read in invoices, and there's a bunch of use cases for those different industries that I'll let you read at your leisure. And just want to go through Copilots. And so I mentioned Copilot. It's kind of a whole new way to work. It basically allows you to interact with Microsoft Office just like you would with your smart speakers. And so you can go through and take information that you have. If any of you have used Microsoft inside of Outlook, you've seen that starting to suggest, hey, you have this meeting with your boss. Here are the last 3 emails that he sent you. And here's what you can do to prepare for that. Here's the things that you're asking for, and here's what he's going to check on. Or perhaps it's your new VP that's coming in, and you need to generate some options and some ideas for her to be successful in the project going forward. So it can generate these things for you. You can go back and say, no, that wasn't good, try it again. You can say, turn this outline into a presentation. You can take the same presentation and say, now, okay, write a contract for that, or create a sales forecast for it. And you can just imagine that there's a ton of possibilities. This was launched in March, and there's general availability coming later on this summer. There's about 600 Microsoft stock customers that are paying for access to this right now, but it requires a difficult handle. If you've gone to some enterprise Teams meetings, you've actually seen this happening, where you can translate and create ideas and topics. You can remember who said what, because it tracks their voice and microphone, as well as it gives you ideas for things that actually happen. So tons and tons of new capabilities coming there that we're all excited about. So how can you get started? So we wanted to give you a real simple, practical framework for supercharging your applications. And the first thing is to go and kind of review your current situation. Now that you've kind of seen some of the ideas, when you get this deck, you'll see some of the other things that you can go think about. You want to go and enlist and talk with your stakeholders. If you're the person that has the budget, fantastic. But if you're not, I guarantee you, by walking around or talking to folks in your organization, they all have things that drive them nuts. Those are things that oftentimes are considered low-hanging fruit or quick wins, or they might be extremely painful or laborious and have low-quality outcomes. Those are the things that we look for. And then we go out and brainstorm, what's the feasibility of this? What's the business case going to have to be in order to get the proper ROI? And then, are the things that we're overlooking. And let's figure out what our budgets and constraints are. And then last but not least, think big, start small, and do a minimal viable product or a test co-pilot where you want to execute quickly and fail fast so that you can learn, improve, and iterate and rinse and repeat. And you can do all of this using tools like ChatGPT and the new Bing. And when you're looking for those things, the best candidates are things that are high volume and rules-based, have a tremendous impact and speed, and we use data to do a lot of our things. So here's some opportunities to improve your help desks. But to recap, ChatGPT really helps make your system smarter, more efficient, and friendly. And you can go and if you're in finance and accounting, PwC has some estimates that up to 40% of the work that's being done is either wasteful or could be automated. So there's a tremendous set of low-hanging fruits there for the folks that typically own the purse strings. And if you can go make them happy, you can do a lot of great things. So with that, I encourage you to go out and do your own homework. You can actually take that homework and then email it to me, and you can get to this website and actually book your times with me. As well as look for our upcoming webinars on August 3rd and September 21st, where we're going to talk about the things that we've been working on. So this is the one we had today. In the future, we got August 3rd, working with teams and AI Copilot, and then Powered BI dashboards and real-time IoT. And then any suggestions that you might have, we're welcome to hear them. And turn it over to you, Jim.
Well, that's great. Thank you very much, Frank. All right, I'd like to suggest we call an audible right now. We're at the bottom of the hour right now. I'd like to close it, but let's do a little after hours here because there are some questions that came through. So I'll go ahead and close the webinar now, but invite people to stay if they wish, and we'll go a couple minutes afterwards because there were several good questions for Frank. So here we go. In line with our commitment to respect your time, we've tried to keep within our 30-minute time frame, but the conversation does not stop here. Every attendee and registrant will receive a follow-up email with a link to the recording of this webinar. You can revisit the insights shared today at your convenience, or even share it with your colleagues who couldn't join us live. And we understand that this topic can raise specific questions for your organization, which is why Frank has offered to hold private 45-minute consultations. In our follow-up email to you, you will find a link to arrange for this consultation. It's a wonderful opportunity to address your unique challenges and needs in a one-on-one setting, and also an opportunity to get to know Softura better and learn about our early access to these technologies. As Frank said, looking ahead, we're excited to announce our webinar will take place on August 3rd at 3 o'clock Eastern Time. We'll dive even deeper into the potentials of AI and generative technologies, discussing how they can revolutionize your business processes. Attendees today will receive an invitation to this next event, and we sincerely hope to see you there. So on behalf of Softura, we'd like to extend our heartfelt thanks to each and every one of you for attending this webinar. Your engagement and participation are what make these events worthwhile. So that's the official close of our webinar, but let's go a little after hours here, Frank. You okay with that?
I'm good for that. In fact,
okay.
I was going to say, you don't even have to close the session. Others might find value in the Q&A
we have attendees. Yeah, we have attendees who are going to stay on. So
Okay.
I just have a couple questions for you. The first one that came through is, what are the key factors to consider when integrating ChatGPT into an existing business infrastructure, and what are the costs associated with it?
Great. Yeah, so the first one about the key factors is, in fact, I'd go back to this slide. It's really, go look for things that you do a lot, that you can define some rules for, as well as that, if you could solve them quickly, would have a great impact. And using that kind of simple formula, you can go and find things and kind of stack rank them against others. But I encourage you to do a couple things. Number one, make sure that you go and get buy-in from whomever it is that has to bless such a thing to happen. In some organizations, it's a regulatory compliance thing. You can't be giving financial advice or what have you if you're a capital markets organization or in the securities world. There's a variety of different complications that could happen out of providing incorrect information, especially like in medical and and healthcare. However, there are fantastic applications for medical and healthcare available. So getting buy-in and understanding who are your stakeholders, and then brainstorming with them, going out and doing your own homework. And I've got examples where I've taken, there's several companies of people that were attending that I had never heard of. And so I literally asked Bing, please tell me who this person is, what their role is, and what their company or their competitors might be doing in this space. It took a while, but then it eventually came back and said, okay, this is so-and-so, this is what they do, here's who their key stakeholders would be, and then here's the things that might be of interest to them. So that's why when we have these 45-minute one-on-ones, I will actually do that for each of you, and as well as go through our own internal knowledge of things that we know that are happening in your particular sector. So that's the key factors for success there. And then the second piece you asked about was around pricing. And
yeah,
pricing,
what are the costs associated with it?
Yeah. So there's several things. So the costs are a bit difficult to understand because they're all based on these tokens and transactions. But to give you a simple idea, this little paragraph right here is 35 tokens. And so there's pricing for the language models, there's pricing for image processing, and there's prices for audio. You can start for free. They give you a $5 free credit, which is from a programming perspective is useful. But you can go and use ChatGPT out on the public web or Bing today for free. And most of the models now have a pay-as-you-go concept. So you're literally paying femto dollars or pennies for thousands of transactions. And they have different things here. We won't go into all the details about that. But basically, you can see here, it's fairly inexpensive to have interactions with these things. But over time, depending on your volume, this can add up. And so if you're using Microsoft's OpenAI services, that can be, relatively inexpensive, $1.50 for, 1,000 predictions, $5.50 for, 1,000 transactions for speech, etc. And here you can see they've got, sentiment analysis, key phrase or entity extraction, language detection, entity recognition, meaning things like PII. So you can give me a group of text or a set of text, and I can determine if there's names in there, if there's phone numbers, credit card numbers, social security numbers, personal medical information. There's actually a separate set of costing for determining health information. You get, aren't they great? You get question and answering for free. And then, because that's the gateway drug to all these other capabilities. Because once you start doing this, you'll start to see the value in making this happen. Then they also have pricing for their vision and other things. So they've got the ability to do, OCR, recognize faces, create thumbnails, go and determine and find people, as well as then figure out adult content and mediate that. I can find celebrities or different types of landmarks that are well known, and they can caption systems. They can moderate them, etc. And you can go and create applications built on all of these things. So that's kind of the pay-as-you-go per item pricing model. There's also, depending on your enterprise and your relationship with Microsoft or Amazon or whomever, they have different pricing tiers for the amount of consumption. And so, for example, for the new OpenAI chat capabilities, they do have an all-you-can-eat version of that, but it's $12,000 a month. So depending on what it is that you do and what the volume of your organization, what sorts of things you're doing with it, that can actually be a very affordable option, especially if you're a very large enterprise. But most of the implementations that we're working with now are starting off in the dozens of dollars and into potentially hundreds of dollars a month, depending on what you're doing with it. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that's great. So we've gone 10 minutes over. Thank you, Frank, for putting up with that question. There are several more questions that Frank will be addressing in your follow-up email, and we look forward to that. So from Frank and me, from the whole team at Softura, Thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you at our next event.
All right. Thank you all. It's been my pleasure.